Welcome to the Fatherhood Fitness Podcast. I'm your host, Anthony Pluff. Each week, we will cover various topics that dads struggle with in their fitness journey. I'll give you actionable steps that you can apply right away, not only to take back control of your own health, but so you're able to be a better example for your kids too. All right, welcome to this week's episode of the Fatherhood Fitness Podcast. Today we have Bryan Fitzsimmons. He is a fellow trainer. Bryan and I have gotten to know each other better over the past few months, and he's a coach that even in that short amount of time, I have learned a lot of great things from, and I think he can share with us a lot of his knowledge today. So I will let him introduce himself, and we'll get started.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. What's up, everybody? I'm Bryan Fitzsimmons, also known as Coach Fitz with two Z's. I help moms over 40 get toned and feel confident so they could be the best for their families. So that's pretty much me in a nutshell, but we'll talk more.
Awesome. So I primarily work with dads. You primarily work with moms, but there's definitely a lot of overlap there, both working with busy parents there. So how did you kind of get started kind of in your niche there?
Yeah, so I mean, that's a common question because it's like, what's a 29-year-old dude training 40-year-old women? And fair question, but it's just who I jive with. It's who, like, when I started training, I did like a really brief stint at a New York sports club where it's like just wasn't the right fit, maybe 1-2 weeks. And then immediately after that, I got my first real training job at Get in Shape for Women, which is like a Boston recreation of curbs, basically. So they have a few places in Jersey where I had the opportunity to work. And I won't lie, when I was just doing it for a job, like to like earn a paycheck, pass some time while I was studying and trying to be a firefighter or a police officer. And the ladies there, I loved working with, absolutely loved working with them, because at the start of the job, I'm like, all right, whatever. But then as we started like coming in and talking, I'm like, this is great. I could do this for a living. And then after that, I had the privilege to move on to Gabriel Fitness and Performance in Berkeley Heights, New Jersey, which is really where I cut my teeth and really got to work and trained and had the opportunity to work in a training staff where we shared all the clients. So I had the opportunity to work with like 300-400 people over the course of like 7 years. So it was an incredible experience. And then eventually I'm like, you know what? This is what I know. I'm not going to try and like train people my own age, even though I could, but I'm like, I know what I'm good at, and it's training moms.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Being able to have that experience early on and kind of, becoming the expert in your field, I think that's super important. There's a lot of people nowadays who try and be everything to everybody, and being able to, for those moms, over 40 looking for a coach, they know for sure, like, you're their solution. So I think that's really cool. Now, you said you kind of shared clients with some other trainers. How did that work?
It was interesting because, as we know, being trainers, we all have kind of different philosophies
Mm.
and ways that we lean. And in a way, for clients, it's great because you get like exposure to a bunch of different methods and everything. And when we would have training meetings, people would always bring something new to the table. Like there was one woman, Michelle, who actually owns Stretch and Strength
Mhm.
company. She does the whole online thing too. And me and her would like shoot the shit and be like, "Oh, can I curse on here?"
It's your show. It's your show.
Okay. All right, fuck it. But we would shoot the shit, and she would bring up these like things from like the wellness space, which I avoid like the plague, but there is some useful stuff in that space. And I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool. And then we would have like another guy, one of the best trainers I ever worked under, Matt Carbone and Joe, and he they both were very into the sports space,
Mm.
and they would bring in the athleticism where I'm like, okay, there's some stuff here we can use for the adults. Like they would be like really big on, because we also trained youth athletes in the
Mm.
same facility, which I would do every once in a while, and it would
Yeah.
be part of the responsibilities. But they'd bring in stuff like power training, which has been a game changer as far as training the older populations. And when we're talking about like fall prevention, it's huge. So having that ability to bounce ideas off each other and and literally like debate people. And like there were a couple of heated exchanges where we're like, no, I'm right. No, I'm right.
Yeah,
So, but hey, friction makes fire.
yeah. Yeah, no, that sounds like a pretty good experience there. I know, like when I first started training it, I know I was in college, and so we're a bunch of college kids kind of learning. We only know what we know, right? And
Yep.
just learning from textbook, learning from experience. You start training your friends and family and things like that, and then
Yep.
you kind of go from there. And so you're very limited. So I think that's a pretty good early experience there to kind of just kind of learn from other trainers and then kind of get a lot of feedback right away, right? I think
Yep.
the online fitness space is awesome. It's you can work with a coach from anywhere in the world, right? You can hire somebody who lives 6 states away. You can hire somebody that lives in a different country than you. I think it's really cool. I think for both a client and a trainer, though, it's a completely different experience than it is in person, right? There's
Yep.
a lot of online fitness experts now who have never actually coached in person. And I think the first thing you realize when you coach in person is theory and practice are two totally different things. You can read, whatever the science and the literature tells you works in theory, but it doesn't factor in the individual. And what are some of the things? What are some of the things you kind of found? Like obviously you had kind of a wide range of clients working with that many people. What are some of the commonalities you have found that all clients kind of struggle with?
I mean, well, to your point before, because I just want to address it real quick with the whole like practice and theory not exactly being like to the T. That used to frustrate me to no end as a new trainer. It's like, I just read this should work, and
Yeah.
it doesn't. But some commonalities, I would say the very like the big ones are the ones that I preach and regurgitate, rehash out pretty much on a daily basis with all my content is the lack of sleep. Like that's just the one big one that everybody seems to struggle with, because when
Yeah.
you got kids in the picture, when you've like I work with a lot of women that are either just approaching menopause or in menopause, or even after they have some issues that linger that make it impossible to sleep all the way through the night. And that sleep is the big one. And then second, a very close second would be hydration, like getting enough water.
Mm.
And a third honorable mention would be like quality foods, because that whole like discussion of, well, I barely eat, and it's like, yeah, you barely eat, but what you do eat is a crap ton of calories. So if we're talking calories, you're eating plenty, but they feel like they're just starving all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. The quality of the food is um, definitely something that it's kind of gets overlooked. I had a conversation on last week's episode with Jordan Syatt, and he was kind of talking about the if it fits in your macros crew, that kind of like the early
Yep.
2000s thing where people thought like flexible dieting. It's got such a negative connotation now because people don't actually um, do it correctly. Flexible dieting is eating 80% whole foods, minimally processed, all these things, and then you can still fit in a cookie or cheese, if it's but people think, oh, flexible dieting, my calorie goal is 2200. I can have 6 pieces of pizza and a piece of cheesecake, and hey, I hit my calorie goal. Sure, you hit your calorie goal, but your health is suffering. And so we kind of talked a little bit about um the difference between like weight loss and health.
Yeah.
there's
And it's
there's
different.
yeah,
It's
exactly.
different. Because I'm self-proclaimed reformed IIFYM, if it
Yeah.
fits your macros. Because I used to do that like to the T, is like I will find a way to get Pop Tarts in here. I will find a
Yeah.
way to eat my Sour Patch watermelon.
Oh
And to
yeah.
be fair, I did get to the point doing that. Like I used to do bodybuilding, and my
Hmm.
first show, I did do it like pretty dirty. Like I ate like nothing but crap,
Yeah.
totally miserable, but I got on stage and I placed decently.
Yeah.
But the difference from that to my second and third show, when I actually focused on better quality stuff, like I got a coach, which was a
Mhm.
big help, and they had a fruit requirement. We focused on like getting enough micronutrients
Mhm.
in, and that was like night and day difference of like, oh, I lost weight, but my body composition was so much better.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's, whether it's you're a mom or you're a dad, all these principles are the same. I think one of the things that's super confusing with, especially with there's so much information online, is the best weight loss program for women, the best weight loss program for men. There are slight differences, but 95, if not more, percent of everything is going to be the same. It's going to be the
Yeah.
same. Like, and I think, just getting the fruit, if sugar, no one ever got, no one ever went overweight because they ate too many
Yeah.
apples, right? There-
They've literally done studies where they like gave people enough fruit for the day and said, go at it, have at it, eat as
yeah,
much as you want. And people couldn't finish, or they came back bloated as hell. Like, get this
right,
away from me. Like,
right,
nobody gets fat on fruit. Come on.
right. And it's very difficult to eat a lot of nutrient dense foods. And I always tell my clients, like, protein is definitely something I focus
Mhm.
on, and I love like steak and meat and things like that. But
You
sorry,
almost had it. You
I
almost made it.
I, I know I've been trying. I've been had this cough now forever. But, thought I made it there, but we focus on protein. We focusing on getting enough protein in, and because that's something I think probably most people struggle with,
Yeah.
and
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 don't you love that conversation where people are like, "Oh, I'm really hungry, but I can't get enough protein." And you're like,
yeah.
"Wait, what?"
Yeah, and like and that's what we kind of talk about too. It's like you're going to eat the same foods. We're just going to work on, maybe changing the order. If you're struggling getting
Yeah.
protein in, eat your protein first, because if think about like a ribeye, 1,000 calories of a ribeye, that's pretty. If you had 1,000. I couldn't eat 1,000 calories of chicken, like
Yeah.
it's just so much. It's so bland, like the plain chicken, but like it's not
I've
very
done it.
enjoyable.
I've
Yeah,
done it, and you never want to go back. Like, if
right.
you want to hate a food forever, do that.
Right. Because it like chicken breast is so lean. It's so lean, and you have to eat so much of it to kind of hit your calorie. And that's why people kind of go to the chicken and broccoli. Because and that's it's something like you're
Yeah.
in the bodybuilding, you know what I mean? So that and I think I think we talked a little bit about this before, about like people who grew up in like the 90s or 80s, 90s, early 2000s. We had all these different food, we had all these different diets, and the nutrition advice, there was
They
nobody
just
to
got
check it.
Yeah, they got dealt a shit hand as far as nutrition goes, because everybody was trying their best. But talk about bad approaches that destroy your relationship with food. All of these super restrictive diets, like demonizing, oh, it's fat, oh, it's carbs, oh, it's vegetables. Somehow we're at
Yeah.
now. It's like it's ridiculous.
Yeah, and I think it is really hard for people to, to have trust, or have too much trust into somebody. And there's so much information out there. And I kind of want to go back to something you said earlier about,
Yeah,
focusing on sleep. Um yeah, that's hard. As a dad, like that's hard. I'm there right now. I've got two young ones. Um and I have another one due here in a couple months. And so like I get that. And
congrats.
yeah, thank you. Thank you. Um But one thing that, 95% of the people I talk to who have young kids, I got young kids, and sleep is hard to come by. And so kind of that, like there's a great book called Mindset by Carol Dweck, where it kind of talks about the fixed mindset, the growth mindset.
The
And this is
Bible.
something that, yeah, this is something that I've definitely had to like work on myself about, because you tell yourself, I'm going to be tired today. Well, you think you're going to be tired because you only got 6 hours of sleep, and you're basing that opinion off somebody else. Somebody tells you only get 6 hours of sleep, you're going to be tired. Well, you're not even listening to yourself. You're listening to somebody else's. And obviously, like, we got a newborn daughter, newborn son. Sleep is going to be hard to get. You're probably going to have less energy than you normally would. But this is where you really have to be disciplined. This is where you really have to be focused, because I am a natural night owl. I used to, I could stay up, I could be tired throughout the whole day, and I could stay up super late at night. But when I had kid, when my son was born, I realized that's probably not a great lifestyle when you're a dad, right? If I, if I
Mhm.
want to help out my wife in the middle of the night, I want to be there for my son, I want to be up in the morning playing with them, something has to change. And if I continue to tell myself I'm a night owl or I'm going to be tired, I'm going to be exhausted, I can't do this, that's exactly what I'm going to get. And I started thinking like at night would be kind of my time where I would, recharge a little bit. My wife would go to bed, my son would go to bed, daughter's in bed, and I would recharge. And then I got to thinking a couple days later, I can't remember what I watched the other night. Like I don't remember what I did. And like is that Netflix episode really that important? And so I switched my schedule. Now I'm getting up before that, now I'm getting up much earlier, and I still have that time to myself. I'm able to, I actually have more time to myself because that's uninterrupted for sure. At night, the kids may wake up. In the
Mhm.
morning, very, I mean, the kids may wake up early every now and then, but if I get up early enough, I have that time. I just had to switch my schedule, and it just takes some planning. And so, what is one thing you do to kind of, because in the personal training world, when you're one on one in person, at least in my experience, I didn't work a lot with clients on nutrition. I didn't work a lot with clients on sleep. But in the
Mhm.
online world, I can help create, there's so much more benefits to working with somebody online because you can create, it's pretty much a lifestyle program. It's a habit-based lifestyle program. And I know you focus on habits too. So how do you kind of go about maybe just kind of restructuring that schedule a little bit?
Yeah, yeah, and I totally agree because when it comes to online versus in person, like in person's great and all. Like I love it for people that have issues with like
Hmm.
injuries and stuff like that, or if they're trying to get like a strength goal or like compete in CrossFit, it's great because you need somebody watching your form, really
Hmm.
dialing it in. But for most people, they don't need that. If they're just trying to get in good shape, trying to lose some body fat, it really comes down to the habits, like you were saying, because let's be real. There are no workouts in the world that burn body fat independent of everything else. Like you can't just say, I'm going to do this workout and then boom, all of a sudden this fat comes off, even though you're eating fast food all the time. Quality isn't all there. It's not going to happen. We've all tried to outwork a bad diet. It never happens. So, yeah, in the online space, it's so much better because when you're an in person trainer, you're working 10, 12-hour days back to back to back to back, and you're always with clients. And then by the time you're done, there's no room to actually help people the other 23 hours of their day. And then in the online space, it's like the total flip flop of that. You're not there with them for that hour, but you have control over what happens the other 23 hours. And you can, well, not control, but you can guide them much better on the stuff that makes a bigger impact, which is those nutritional habits, the sleep, the water, and all that stuff, because that gets people the results that they want more so than that 1 hour in the gym.
Right. And yeah,
Sorry, did I answer your original question? I know I
no,
went off
that
on a tangent.
no, that's great. The more information, the better. But no, I completely agree. I think the online fitness space. I think it's still fairly new.
Yeah.
It's still fairly new, but I think there's so many opportunities. And I've hired coaches personally to help me, and which I think is the coolest thing in the world. Like these
Yeah.
coaches I've looked up to, or I've followed for years, and like I have the opportunity to work with them. Although I meet them virtually on Zoom, you know what I mean, and things
Yeah.
like that. But I think it's super cool, and because then I can focus on other things. You know what I mean? Because the workouts, yes, the workouts are important. I still have a couple in-person clients because I really like it. I've had them
Yep.
for a long time now, and it's just something I enjoy doing. And to be honest, that's I learn a ton. That's and I can
Oh,
bring
yeah.
that back to my online clients because like I mentioned earlier, if you've never worked with somebody online, you have no idea about the process, right? Every
Mhm.
theory goes back to the theory and practice thing. And so that's kind of where I'm able to kind of learn these things. I can fine tune my programs, then I can create the program with the specific cues that I know that they need. And then when we meet in our Zoom call, we can focus on our habits. We can focus on maybe the mindset of that, which is another huge aspect of all of it. Um, and that kind of leads me to my next question. How do you, so most online programs now are kind of structured, 12 weeks, 6 months, maybe a year and stuff. Um, how do you kind of lay the foundation for clients to not only have, because there's a lot of people who have success. Most people who come to me that, they've lost 50 pounds, they've lost 25 pounds, they've lost they've lost it, gained it back, lost it, gained it back, lost it, gained it back. So how do you ensure that when clients have success with you, they maintain it?
Yeah, because that is the real missing piece in all of this. Because we know everybody that signs up for a nutrition program that is like one of those big ones, you kind of just like bite your tongue and cringe a little bit, like, all right, I'll see you in 6 months.
Yeah.
Uh, because what a lot of programs don't have are that transition to making it into a lifestyle. It's always the recurring, like it's the revolving door of buy our supplements, stick to our programs, come to our meetings, and if you come off of it, you're screwed. But the best coaches, when somebody leaves a year, 2 years, 3 years later, they're messaging you saying, hey, I'm still doing this thing. And it comes down to simplicity and making habits around people's lives, not just regurgitating some research or these methods that you really haven't put into practice yet. You just tell people do this and then leave it at that. That's not going to work. That's not going to help people long term. What helps people long term is when you say, okay, I want you to eat this many calories. And then they come back and they're like, well, this past weekend I went to a barbecue and I kind of just didn't track anything. Or I went to a wedding and I really didn't want to break my phone out and track. And you as the coach say, okay, well, why don't we try a habits based approach? Or why, if you're doing both simultaneously, which sometimes I'll do too, is like, let's come up with a strategy for when you're in that situation. Because
Mhm.
those landmark events where like weddings or barbecues or things like that are like that first step towards people falling off track because they
Mhm.
don't have that plan. They don't get right back at it. So doing things like one method that my clients absolutely love that has worked very, very well. Like they've come back from the weddings and barbecues and been like, I honestly thought I would be heavier when I stepped on the scale, or like I would feel bloated, but I'm not. And that's the one plate rule, where it's like, you get one standard size plate, because a lot of things are buffet style. Because if you have a lot of
Yeah.
people around, you get that buffet going, and it's real simple. You just take the standard size plate, put whatever you want on it, and then that's what you get. Now, if you've been a client for a while, you know the protein, the vegetables, the healthy fats are going to fill you up, and you're
Right.
not going to be wanting a second or a third plate. But if you do like 80% of your plate with that stuff, and the 20% has like a cookie, a cupcake, or like you say, I'm going to leave a corner off and I'm going to get a drink instead. That's a way to work around it so that you're not that weird person at the party tracking their macros, but you're staying on track and you're having a great time, not depriving yourself. So habits like that and helping people get a strategy going for when that recurring thing comes up over and over again is life changing.
Yeah, no, and that's awesome. I do something very similar. I really like that kind of one plate thing. I always have clients, just prepare in advance. Just what like every once in a while we'll go to like Olive Garden or something. You get the breadsticks. You go like how like you can't say no to them, and so you
Yeah.
just create rules for yourself. And people feel so restricted with the rules, but it actually gives you so much more freedom. It's the Jocko Willink.
I was going to say, were you
Discipline
going there?
equals freedom. Yep, yep. And so like
Best book ever.
yep. And so I always talk about like, if I'm gonna go, I'm having two breadsticks. I'm having two breadsticks. Have as much salad as I want. I don't really care. And then I'll eat my meal. If I'm hungry, I'll eat the whole meal. Like typically it's kind of hard to finish the meal after you load up on salad and breadsticks and stuff. But like with the wedding, I think that's great. The one plate rule. You that I may actually steal that strategy, because what I usually do is I just have them plan ahead. Know in advance. Are you going to allow yourself to have one plate or two plates? Are you going to have one dessert or two dessert? Are you going to have one drink or two drinks? Whatever your answer is fine. It doesn't matter. Just create it and stick with it. Just because then you've made that decision. It's a conscious decision. Whatever decision you're making, just make it a conscious one. And it kind of goes back to that, just like uh yeah, another big buzzword right now is that intuitive eating and things like that. And, that it's very difficult to kind of get back to that, like how we naturally were. But,
Yeah.
like that one plate thing is awesome. Like I'm a little, um, um, I guess, more freedom there where, they have their one plate and then the dessert is separate. Or, what some of my clients, struggle, they kind of have that all or nothing. And so they do, uh, they can't just have, one beer. They can't just have one cookie or something. So then I make them choose. You have your one plate, load up on protein, veggie, just like
Mhm.
you said there, but then choose either drinks or dessert. So just choose one there and stuff. And that seems to make a big difference. So like, oh, if I had, ended up having 2 or 3 drinks, no big deal because, I didn't have that cheesecake that I wanted. Or if I had a second piece of cheesecake, you know, I didn't have those 3 or 4, beers after that or something like that, because then you have your big meal, then you have, and then after you've drank, you're probably a little hungry. So it kind
Yep.
of winds up into it. And so we just always talk about, having a game plan, having whatever you're doing, looking at the menu ahead of time when you're going to a restaurant. So that's, it sounds simple. It sounds like, well, how's looking at the menu? How's having a game plan? It's just being mindful
Yeah.
of your choice and then owning them. Maybe you went a little over, maybe you went a little over tonight, but why did you go over? Did you not have a strategy? Did you have a strategy and did you not follow it and stuff? So it's just, kind of learning, and, these things take times. And
Yep.
unfortunately, it's not what people want to hear, but sometimes they take years, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, it all depends on what pace you're going at, because some people will move faster than others, and not everybody has a picture perfect life where they can just implement things and it'll just flow perfectly like we'd all love. But that's
Right.
not the way the cookie crumbles. But I like how you said, like, basically what we're getting at here is it's intention and awareness, like accepting the fact that like you're thinking about it. Like most of us just go in thoughtless, like, if my stomach rumbles, I'll grab something when I'm hungry, and then it leads to bad things.
Yeah.
And the other thing that you mentioned too, like I know I stole this from OTA because like I know John Goodman and the team preach about taking imperfect action.
Right.
And when you talk to these all or nothing types that are like, I'm all in or I'm all out, it's like, it's very hard to curve their way of thinking. And I tell all my clients, like, I make them promise the first day, like, are you going to commit to embracing progress over perfection? And I get a lot of, and I'm like, we'll get there, but this is the
Yeah.
first step.
Yeah. And I think that's huge. And I think it's important to um, point out that, even trainers, myself, I'm not going to speak for you, but I struggle with these things too.
Oh,
You know what I mean?
100%. We all do.
Yeah. And it's like, there are, years of bad programming where, you label food as good and bad and things like, it's very hard to get out of. And so
Yeah.
I think, just, it, I it's easy. I think it's easy to look at like a program. You find something online, whether that's your program, my program, a fellow trainer's program, or maybe something you found in Men's Health or something. You know what I mean? No, they're all kind of labeled as 6 weeks to this, 12 weeks to that, 6 months. But to be honest, they're all, no matter how long the length of it is, it's all a foundation. Like I've never read a book and was able to change my life right now. It started the
Never.
process. It always starts the process. I'm currently reading a book right now for the second or third time, and every single time I've read it, I've got something different out of it because I'm in a different headspace now. I'm in a different point in my life. I've been able to implement some of the things from the first time, so now I think differently, and now I'm able to kind of implement more things that I'm learning. And that's the same thing. If you're struggling, eating slowly, if you're struggling eating until full, you may be struggling now, and a year from now, you still may be struggling too. But the important thing is that there may be different struggles. There's always going to be something you're going to overcome. And there's never going to be a day. Again, these are a lot of hard truths today, but
Yep.
there's never going to be a day where all of a sudden you're like, that's it. I got it. I've got this great relationship with food. My workout program is fantastic. My kids are sleeping through the night. There's always going to be something, you're going to have to adapt to.
Yep. And I tell my clients that, like, when you're always on and off, it's like we're a light switch. We're on or we're off. But when we change it into a dial,
Mm,
like, we're turning the volume up. Now, there will be points in time where you do have to turn the volume down because other things take priority, like a newborn or an injury or something comes up, like you change jobs. Turn the dial down, but it never goes all the way to zero. You're always doing something, and you're doing the best that you can with the situation that you have at the moment. And then when that time frees up, you can crank the dial up and go harder and get a little bit more of an accelerated growth
mhm.
bit on whatever goal that you're working on. Because I
Yeah.
mean, and the other thing I wanted to talk about that you brought up is the fact that we struggle too, because let's be real, we're in an environment right now that is not ideal for not gaining excess body fat. Like, we are surrounded by hyper palatable foods that are ridiculously high in calories, that are very, very convenient. They're at convenience stores. They're like on the road. Every 5 miles, you see a McDonald's or you see a Wendy's. And on top of that, every advertisement you see has food. So it's
Right.
like we're fighting a battle every single day, and we're not immune to it. We just know that we have some strategies to combat it.
Yeah.
Because let's be honest, if we didn't have all these ridiculously easy, high calorie options surrounding us, we wouldn't have an obesity problem, because like obesity was it's a third world problem. You don't see it in first world countries where they got to pick all their food out of the tree, kill it, and all this stuff. If we stick to the basics of these whole foods, that shouldn't be an issue.
Right. Yeah. And it's, we have so much availability to us. One thing I talk about with my clients is, we all grew up in an era where we were told to finish our plates, and where did that come from though? Like,
The
think
starving
about,
kids in Africa are going to get our leftovers.
I
That's
know.
why.
Yeah. That's what, yeah, we were all told that, there's somebody else to, and they're never going to get that food. But we grew up in an era where our parent, more than likely our grandparents, like they didn't have great refrigeration. They didn't have all these, food is at an abundance now,
Yeah.
and it's cheap. It's like, oh, I mean, I know prices, everything are up right now, but all things considered, food is cheap. We can get it when we want it. If I want a steak, I could go right now and get a steak. If I, they're literally, I live in the middle of the country, and so seafood is, we still get it, but it's like
Sucker.
yeah, you probably get
I'm
a
right
lot
on
more
the
than I do.
coast. I'm right by the water.
Right. And so, like, but there are very few things that I cannot get when I want them.
Yeah.
And that, like, we have DoorDash now, and kind of like what you said there, is just there, everything is just food, 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 food. One simple habits, one thing that has helped me is I deleted DoorDash and everything from my phone. And I went like 2 weeks and never thought about it because I never scrolled past it on my phone. And it was like, it just blew my mind, like how something that simple can change it. But that really is how it is. Like,
I should probably do that. I
yeah,
had DoorDash last night.
yeah. That's okay. I swung through Taco Bell after a softball game, but
See, we're
but
not immune. We do it too.
yep. And I think that's the thing though, is like we're able to do it though, and we don't feel bad about ourselves.
Yeah.
And that took a really, and for me, that took a really long time. I had that, that good food, bad food with my son, and now my daughter, she's getting a little older. We talk about, like, we have foods that are sometimes foods, and we have foods that we can have more time, like more nutritious and less nutritious, taking away the good food, the bad food. And to be
Yeah.
honest, it helps my son because my son will ask, "Is this a sometimes food?" And so, like, but to be honest, it helps me. It helps me a lot too because I think, I think everybody grew up, and now I think there are so many resources now, which it can be kind of overwhelming. But we are moving to an era now where we really don't have an excuse anymore. We have so much information, and although sometimes it can be hard to decipher this information, we have so many great coaches now. There are so many,
Yeah.
like the fitness world can get a bad rap and stuff. But there are so many great coaches I know. There are
Yeah.
so many people work. You just have to. Sometimes it takes a little bit to get. like last week's episode, I had Jordan Side. If you're not following him, um, he's a great example. He's got a book that came out, uh, here in a little bit. We'll give everybody your kind of Instagram information and stuff too.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
there are so many great coaches out there that are doing it for the right reasons. And to be honest, it's usually not the people with huge followings. And unfortunately, that's just the way it goes. But I think I think kind of getting out of that, I like last night, I told you I had a softball game. It was 11 o'clock at night on my way home. I was starving and I got a steak burrito, you know what I mean? And I thought nothing of it. I was hungry, I made sure I had protein and stuff. That was it. I didn't care it was from Taco Bell,
It's all that
but
matters.
ask me 5 years ago, and I would have been like, okay, I got to get back on track tomorrow.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not getting off track. It's just, to me, it was what was available to me. The Whole Foods wasn't. No, we don't have a Whole Foods here, but Whole Foods wasn't open at 11 o'clock, and you know what I mean. So sometimes conveniency is real too. So and price is a factor too. It's just when you do have those decisions, are you making the better of the two?
Exactly. And it's all about making the better decision most of the time. It
Right.
doesn't have to be perfect again. It just needs to be most of the time, because the sum of all of your actions will result in where you're at right now. So if that sum is positive, then you'll be in a positive place. If it's negative, you'll be in a negative place. It's pretty
Mm,
simple when you break it down. But I like how you before brought up like how people have excuses and stuff.
mm,
And I think especially when kids are in the mix, like they could be the world's best or the world's worst excuse, because
mhm,
it could go one of two ways. You could go the route of, well, my kids have the goldfish out, and like if they leave a handful, I'll eat it, or every time they leave a chicken nugget, I will eat it. Or you could be like, well, now that I have kids, I got to set the example like you're doing, where it's like they almost help in a way where it's like, oh, I don't want to eat this because they're going to see me do it. And
mhm.
then it's almost like an accountability partner, even though they don't know they don't know that they're your accountability partner.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's kind of like John Berardi, like he has a similar approach, like one of the best coaches of all time, nutrition wise. He's like, there's uh, food for our body, and then there's food for our soul. And the soul food is like the bad, like quote unquote bad stuff, but it
Mhm.
makes us feel good. It scratches that itch, and everything else makes us feel good because we're covering our bases. So, I mean, it could go one of two ways.
Yeah. No, I think, yeah, you said there, like, using your kids as an excuse. Um, and I think, specifically, with my clientele, being dads, that's one thing that we kind of have to have a heart to heart with. They're like, well, like I do pretty well throughout the day, but the snacking, and I'm eating my kids' snacks. And so we kind of have to step back. Okay, well, what are you giving your kids and stuff? Well, I give them this, and it's not great for me. And then I always ask them the question, and this one usually stumps them up, is if it's not great for you, is it great for them? And then, it's kind of like thinking, well, why am I giving this to my kid? You know what I mean? And it's like,
Yeah,
that's kind of the thing. It's like, if these foods you struggle with, if they're struggle, like, what is that? What kind of example are you setting there? And I'm not saying you can't have gold. Like, I love goldfish, like things like that. But if you're giving your kids these snacks that that you have deemed as bad, why are you giving it to them? You know what I mean?
exactly.
It's probably almost more important that they don't eat it rather than, and so I think that's too, like, being that example, like, for them, finding time, it is hard, like your kids are almost a mirror of you, you know what I mean? My
Yeah,
one thing that always kind of guides me is, obviously your kids won't turn out exactly like you.
hopefully
But
better.
right, right. But when I'm struggling with something, I always, if one of my kids ended up exactly like me, would I be okay with that? And that's kind of my compass on a lot of things, because if I'm not happy with, a certain area of my life, I need to improve, you know what I mean? Because my kids are going to see that too. And I think that's important too. Like,
Yeah.
I may be struggling with, food choices and stuff, but your kids are also going to see the work you're putting in too. You may be struggling now, but it doesn't really matter where you are right now. You
Yeah.
know, like I've mentioned this book a couple times to some people. It's called The Gap and the Gain, and
I'm
it's
writing that one
yeah,
down.
it's a really good one. I I'm blanking on the author's name, but he wrote it with Dan Sullivan. Dan Sullivan came up with the concept of always measuring backwards. Like people always tend to measure themselves against an ideal of the ideal of who they want to be or how other people should be. And it kind of talks about like Thomas Jefferson, like the pursuit of happiness. Like happiness is always something that we're chasing. It's not something that we have. And his concept is always measure backwards. So no matter where you are in life, no matter, how bad things are, look at how far you've come. Build off of those wins, and that's where your confidence is going to come from to keep going. Because when you're working at, you say you have 100 pounds to lose and you have 95 pounds to go. Well, look, you've already, you've lost. Instead of I have 95 pounds to go, I've lost 5 pounds. You know what I mean? It's just a simple mindset shift. And he
Yeah.
talks about at the end of each day, writing your wins and then predicting what your wins are going to be tomorrow. That really helped me. He recommends it daily and especially quarterly too, like every 90 days and stuff. When I started doing it, I did it at lunchtime and I did it at the end of the day because I needed those wins. I broke my day in two. I looked at, like, well, what have I done today? Well, I haven't got anything done. Well, actually, I did this and this and this. And I'm like, oh, shoot. All of a sudden, I have energy to get my to-do list done for the rest. And I think that's important, especially with a weight loss goal as well. I think that can be very helpful.
Absolutely. And it really gets into the whole process of it all because, I mean, let's be real, the weight loss isn't going to be there all the time. But if you think back and you're like, well, I did this many workouts, I did this many habits, I've done so much, like I'm going in the right direction if I'm putting in the work.
Mhm.
Like I know with my client check ins, like when we go on the phone, I'll tally off every single workout they've done and the habits. And I'll be like, we're at like 130 completed habits. And they're like, yeah, I got to keep thinking about that because I didn't see the weight come off the scale this week. And I'm like, but you're killing it right now. Like, and
Yeah.
then when we measure the inches, they're like, oh, yeah, I am because the weight doesn't tell the whole story. And when you're looking back, it helps keep you in the right frame of mind. Because let's be real, a lot of people hop off these journeys because one day trips them up or they have like one bad day and they don't do that looking in the mirror and be like, oh, I came a long way from where I was at.
Right.
And
And
I got a good recommendation for you right back
okay.
for a book. And it
Okay.
might seem a little unconventional because you're like, all right,
I'm
this
right.
this is a famous guy,
I
but
always take book recommendations.
yeah,
So
it's Green Lights from Matthew McConaughey.
I already got it,
All
my
right,
friend.
all right, all right.
I got it on
But
audiobook.
there
Yeah.
we go. Because he talks a lot about journaling.
Okay.
And to your point, like writing stuff down. And like one of the things that he got into a little bit was talking about green lights, like the
Mm,
things that he like wrote down that when things were going really good, he wrote down the commonalities and the things that were
mm,
happening. And when things were not going good, he would write down what was going on. And then he'd look back on these journals and be like, oh, well, it seemed like when I was doing this habit or this thing, I was having a lot of good luck. I was having a lot of success and things were moving in the right direction. And when I stopped doing this, that's where things kind of went off the rails. So
mm.
it helps a lot to like reflect and see what the commonalities are and what your personal green lights are that get you in the right direction and keep you in the right direction.
Yeah. And see that goes right back to what we were talking about earlier about sometimes it takes, a second or third try. You got to keep going because I actually had that audiobook last year and I listened to it. We had moved houses. I was doing housework, doing yard work, doing all this stuff. And so I had it on the whole time. And I thought of it more of as an um more of like an autobiography, not really looking for the lessons in it and stuff. And I didn't get much out of it, to be honest. And so now I'm going to go back through now that, you know what I mean? It's like and so I think that just circles right back to what we were talking about there. And you talked about with, clients having these weight loss goals and stuff. Um, before I started kind of, measuring backwards, doing all this stuff now with my clients on, check-in calls, we always, what's a win? We always start with the positive and stuff. What's something that's going well? And I didn't always do that, and I think I used to beat myself up a ton. Like, I wish I could work with this client again. I wish I could work with, you know what I mean? Because I'm constantly getting better as a coach. If somebody worked with me 2 years ago, I'm not the same coach. I hope not. I hope if you worked with me 2 years ago and you worked with me now, I hope you don't get the same experience. I hope it's much better, and it's
Yep.
like,
We're
because
always improving.
we're trying, and I think that's the point of it, is to always improve. I had a client very recently. He lost 25 pounds in 12 weeks, which is incredible progress, incredible progress. But all he could focus on was those next 20 pounds. So he was never happy, never satisfied. And that's very difficult, because once he gets to that goal, now I don't know this for sure, everybody's different, but from my previous experience with clients, once he gets to that goal, he still won't be happy. He will be happy for a little while, but then there'll be another goal to chase. There'll be something else to chase, because he's measuring himself against his ideal. There will always
Yep.
be, instead of measuring backwards and stuff. And it's a really hard, it's one, if you've been doing this your whole life, it's very hard to get out of. Two, when you do start, break it up. I had to break it up into very small wins, like hourly, like what am I doing well, I want to, you know, have an impact here. I want to sign up this. I want to grow the podcast things. Well, just starting a podcast is a big step, right? And now, like,
Yeah.
having interviewing, other trainers and people like that, that's a huge step and stuff. And like, measuring yourself against vanity metrics. I think this too, like likes on Facebook and Instagram and all this stuff
Yeah.
don't really mean anything. Like,
No, they
they don't
really
really
don't.
mean much at all. And
And
so,
it is
sorry,
a
go
f-
ahead.
oh no, it is a fine line, because like you definitely don't want to get complacent, but at the same time, you don't want to like miss the opportunities to be happy. And
Right.
one of the reasons like I love watching Lord of the Rings, and like this morning I was watching Rings of Power, is because they always have these gems in there where I'm like,
Mm.
damn, that's good. And they had one this morning where one of, if anybody here has listened or watches the Rings of Power, the Harfoots, which are basically before the Hobbits, but I won't get too nerdy. The one girl says, like, what's the point in living if we're not living good? And
Mhm.
it's like, if we're not enjoying it, what's the point? There's no like, it's good and all to aim high, but the whole idea is to fall in love with the process and fall in love with the daily tasks, and like the enjoyment and the good feeling that you do get, like that endorphin rush, the way that you view yourself, the way that your family views you, the way that you walk into a room. That's the stuff to appreciate in the moment. And
Mm.
yes, it's good to have a next goal, but don't lose sight of what's going on that's good right now for what is to come.
Right. And that's like the fulfillment over happiness thing. Like, when I first, like, wanted to kind of get in the online fitness space, I wanted to, I told myself, like, well, I want to do this. I want to be around my kids more. I want to be home more and things like this. And then when I started, I was spending more time, working than I was when I wasn't doing, you know what I mean? And I was like, then I kind of had to reevaluate. Well, I got into this to spend more time with my kids, so I'm gonna go spend some time with my kid, you know what I mean? And like, things like
Yep.
that. And it's made me more intentional, not having my phone out around him in the evenings, not scheduling calls at
Yeah.
night, never, like, I have like my non-negotiables, like never missing dinner, not missing bedtime, things like that. And
It's
and I
like that old cliche of the CEO that always says, well, I'm working hard for my family, but they're
right,
never home. And it's like,
right,
really? Are you?
right. And I mean, I think that's another topic too, of like the motivational why people start, why people start, and then what continues going. But I know we're running out of time here, so we may have to schedule a second podcast interview
I'm
here.
always down.
We had a lot of great topics here. But what's one thing, like, obviously, like we said at the beginning here, so you work with moms over 40, and I work with dads, um, and so definitely a lot of similarities there, different lives. But kind of running parallel to each other there. So what's one major takeaway for the audience today?
I would say if regardless if you're a mom or a dad, it's I'm noticing a trend where it's like everybody gets lost in their families and doing everything for their families first. But just remember you can't drink from an empty cup. If your cup isn't full, you're going to give your family a half-ass effort. So if you want to be the best that you possibly can be, fill your cup. Take care of number 1 so you can take care of everybody else.
Awesome. That's great. We're gonna end it there. Bryan, I appreciate you coming on the show today, and I look forward to having you back on soon.
It's been a pleasure. Been a pleasure. And if anybody wants to check out what I got going on, I got the Fit 40 podcast. I'll send you the link. The Fit 40 family in Facebook and pretty much on all the socials. It's coach_fitz FITZZ. So yeah, thank you for
Awesome.
having me on.
Awesome. Yep. Thanks for reminding me there. That please go check him out on Instagram, and he's got a podcast. Friend him on Facebook.
And the
He's
TikToks are always hot too.
yeah, he's a TikTok star, but he's got a lot of great content. He's definitely one of the good coaches in the space. So thanks again, Bryan, and we'll talk to you soon.
Awesome. Thanks.
That concludes this episode of the Fatherhood Fitness Podcast. Thank you for those of you who took time out of your busy schedules to listen. If you have any questions or comments or an idea for a topic for a future episode, please feel free to reach out, and I'd love to hear from you.